Hello, it's colouring time again. Time to continue with this thing. Starting a little bit later today. I've already had my coffee, so I'm slightly more awake than last time. I've even been outside the house. Oh, shock, gasp. Nice little walk out to the post box and back. It's quite a sunny day. Quite nice just to leave the house for 5 minutes and have some fresh air and remember that life exists outside the study. It's good. So today, let's calm down a bit. I'm going to try not to wobble the camera so much because I noticed after going through the editing of the last video that, yeah, that was a very shaky camera. I'm sorry. I'm hoping my voice won't be quite so breathy today, having actually had my hot beverage for the morning. Got a glass of water to keep me going as well. So, I'd quite like to make some nice progress. If we could get this top quarter done, that would be nice. Yes. What colours though? Well, I know. Ooh, I was going to say I know I'll do the berries red, but then I thought, ooh, blackberries. Maybe a deep, dark, purpley tone. Yep, I like that idea. We'll start there. So, what are we going to talk about today? I thought I might talk about mediums, media, as in different materials for doing art. I think it's one of those subjects where I think there are people who are put off of doing art because they think they have to go out and get the fancy materials to do the fancy things. And I want to be able to say, no, that's not true. But at the same time, I know that there are limitations with some cheap materials. And I think it's that you can create art with anything, really. I mean, that goes into the whole thing of what is art, which we're not going to go into today because that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But you can make art with anything. However, having better materials can make your life easier when it comes to creating art that looks the way you want it to. Yes, I think that sort of is the point that I wanted to make. So, for example, when I started drawing again a few years back, I just did some little black and white line drawings. In fact, my sister bought me a book about meditative drawing doodles. And I just sat and I think I used, it might even have been this pen. This one's just still going. And it's just, one of those fairly fine tipped ink pens that just a pen. It's nothing fancy. I could have done it with a biro. I think I did it with a pencil occasionally. And I used little squares of paper from a memo pad. And that is not fancy paper. That is just cheap memo pad paper and a bog standard pen. And I did little ink doodles, and I really enjoyed it. And they made me feel better, and I enjoyed expressing myself artistically by doing that, even though it was absolutely bog standard cheap materials. And then I got to a point where I thought, right, well, I'm quite enjoying drawing with this. But this particular pen The way the ink goes down, I'm a little bit prone to smudging it. I wonder if I could get a different pen. And I like the idea of maybe sort of working with different line weights a bit. So I'll get some fine liners deliberately to do this in different sizes. And I did. I went out and got some fine liners. In fact, let's show the fine liners. I got these. Unipin Fine Line. Water and fade proof pigment ink, apparently. That's 0.1, 0.3. I think I had a 0.5 or 0.005 or something somewhere. So I had a couple of different thicknesses to work with instead of just my one pen. And the ink flows a little bit differently. And that gave me a little bit more ease of variation in what I was doing. Because instead of having one pen that produces a line of a certain thickness, and if I wanted to do a thicker line, I have to very carefully go alongside the line I already drew and make it thicker. I could just use a thicker pen. So more materials made life easier. Then I decided that I quite liked the idea of colouring some of my line drawings, at which point I'm going through my old supplies and fishing out old pencils and paint and whatnot, whatever I had. And discovering that some of the, my pencils were, I don't know if it was the paper I was using or the pencils or a combination, but I couldn't really get colour smoothly onto the paper the way I wanted it to. I couldn't get the finished thing to look the way it was in my head. Because the pencil just went round a bit scratchy. It didn't really blend very well. It was just very meh, a bit meh. It's hard to describe, but I wasn't completely happy with it. So I bought some nicer pencils. And in the end, I bought these watercolour pencils. I thought, well, I can use them as pencils for colouring, like so. And they do blend lovely. They blend lovely, they do. Blend smoothly, they go over each other, it's nicely pigmented. I'm not having to put a ton of pressure on the pencil to get the colour onto the page, which was something I found with some of the cheaper ones. You just really had to work to get pigment on the page. Whereas with these, I can be quite light and still get colour going down, which is nice. I like it. Yes, so I had nice new watercolour pencils. I could colour neatly. And then because they're watercolour, I could colour in with a pencil and then I could go over with a wet brush and blend it all out that way and end up with a painted look. And I think there's limitations to doing that. You do have to learn how to sort of push the colour around. If you've got a lot of pencil on the paper, when you put the water onto it, it tends to get pushed by the brush and you'll end up with sort of a faded area and a darker area. So you've got to learn to keep it smooth or else to work with those darker and lighter areas. Or to not put as much pencil down, potentially. But that was a whole new thing to explore. And at that point, I found that those pens that I last showed, which I think say water and fade proof, I think they are, but only if I really let them dry and settle. Whereas I tend to be impatient, draw a thing and then try and colour it, which tended to lead to things getting a bit blurry. I found things did smudge, which I wasn't particularly happy with. So I thought, well, okay. They say pigment ink, they say waterproof and whatnot, but I'll have a look at other pens, see what's out there. Maybe I can get something that's a little bit better quality that might be a bit more reliable. And now I use my Micron Pigmas. Oh, Pigma Micron. Pigma Micron. And it's the same thing. It's fine liner, various sizes. This is an 01. I like my 005 for very fine lines. And those I can pretty much draw, and by the time I've got my paint out, I can go over it and the lines don't smudge, which I really like. So I can combine my line work with my watercolours quite happily. So in that sense, I've bought slightly more expensive materials and been able to work more interestingly with them, I suppose. But I still started with just doing some doodles with a pen on memo paper. And I think I said when I started working with this book, the first page in this book, I really don't like. Like, one side is some very vibrant fine liners I might experiment with them at some point, trying hatching, but trying to color block areas with them, they look really streaky. I don't feel like they go down very well. They're very, very vibrant, and I'm limited to the well, I think it might be 20 colors. I have 20 pens in that set. Because they don't really blend very well, so I can't particularly mix colors. So pencils, I switched to pencils and went, I can blend colors, that'll be a lot better. But I started out with a cheap set. And I found that I had to really work on the page to try and get the pigment onto the page to make the color actually show, which I didn't particularly like. And even then, it was quite faded pastel. So I sat and I thought, well, you know what? I got bought a set of actual watercolor paints, so my watercolor pencils aren't getting used quite as much because I'm experimenting with the actual paints and loving them. So I'll use my pencils in here, and switching to these was immediately obvious what a difference it made, because they just work so much better. The colors are better, they blend better. Just harping on about these pencils now, but the point is, yes, more expensive materials give you more options, but you don't need them. You can absolutely do art without them. You can start, you can experiment, you can try things with whatever you've got to hand. I mean, most of my sketching, I just use a mechanical pencil. I have a nice set of proper, all different what's the word? Hardness sketching pencils. Have I used them? No, because I'm not used to working with them. And mostly I sketch to get an outline so I can colour with paint rather than trying to get an in-depth pencil sketch. So yeah, it's not necessarily something I need to be using at the moment. So I just use my mechanical pencil. It does the job. I did go out and get a putty eraser to back up my little old white plastic eraser, because it lets you kind of gently take away the heaviest of the pencil, but still leave quite a faded line. So your drawing's there to use as a guideline to paint over, but you've taken away the heaviest marks so they don't show through your watercolor paint if you're being quite thin with it. It's not the word I want, but it'll have to do. And again, I can take the time to erase very carefully with the standard pencil eraser and still leave myself with a faded line, or be very careful when sketching and only put down very, very faded lines. Or I can have spent, let's have a look, £1.95 to get a putty eraser. That means that I can sketch without fretting as much, use that to just roll over an image and take away the heaviest pencil, and save myself a bit of time and effort for the same result. So I spent a bit of money, I got a different material, it makes my life easier. But I could still do what I wanted without it. Not quite sure where I'm going with that, but, well, the point is, do art. Do art. Don't be afraid to say, oh, well, I've only got this cheapy set of pencils, but I'd like to do some colouring. You know, you can do colouring with cheapy pencils. It may not come out perfectly how you want it to, but you can still do it. You can have a go and see if you enjoy colouring with pencils. I feel like I could talk about that just repetitively, kind of endlessly, so I'm not going to, because I think I've covered it. So for now, I'm just going to knuckle down and colour this bit, and maybe we'll do a time lapse. Actually see that particularly well on the camera. I've just added in a bit of green, made a little kind of brown stem with sort of golden dots. I don't know what they are. bit of a different one today, I suppose. I didn't really go off on tangents for once, which might be good. Talking a bit about mediums and just generally about how you can just use whatever, use what you've got. Don't necessarily be afraid to try different mediums. If you've been using a cheapy set of pencils and you've been eyeballing something that's like student grade or something, then why not try them? Give them a go. Don't be afraid of expensive materials, but don't feel like you have to have them to do things. That's kind of where we went with, I suppose. A bit vague, but hopefully, maybe somebody needed to hear that. Right, I reckon that'll do for today. Felt like a bit of a round and round kind of a talk about media, but it felt like something I wanted to say, so I said it. And we did some more colouring, we made some progress, so we'll leave it there for now. Bye bye. Where's this one? Walnut brown, sensible colour.